Hey, my tech friends, thanks for stopping by. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Let's continue to grow this channel. Hope you guys enjoy this video. Hey guys, welcome back. So, let's take a look at something a little different in this video. It's been brought to my attention that a variety of people have made mention about using third-party, custom developed web browsers compatible with Windows XP. And my curiosity rather, has made me wonder whether or not these browsers are actually as secure as people think they are. Do they have viruses built into them? Are they configurable where they allow remote access? Do they do anything sketchy? And the thing is we could put this on an XP machine, but we can't run the latest antivirus. So there's no real way for us to run an antivirus with all the built-in functions and features of something like a Malwarebytes or Super Anti-Spyware on Windows XP, because they just simply don't make those types of antiviruses for them. Anti-ransomware, things of that effect. So I figured, let's spin up a Windows 10 machine. Let's install Malwarebytes on it. Let's install Super Anti-Spyware on it. Let's make sure Defender's activated. Let's put some security on the actual machine. And then let's copy over these browsers and actually test them on a supported system. And let's see if we get viruses, Trojans, ransomware. Let's see what actually comes in these pre-packages of these actual browsers. Stick around. So guys, throw some comments down below and let me know what customized browsers you guys are using. If there's anything that's not covered in this video, let's add those to the system at a later date and run through the gauntlet of those particular browsers as well. And let's see if they offer any security or offer any benefit, or for that matter, anything questionable on those particular browsers. But yeah, let me know in the comments what you guys run if you don't see it on here. And if you do see it on here, let me know how you've used it in the past, or if you're still using it. Do you have any issues? What websites don't work? What works? Just throw some information, some comments down below. Okay, guys, so the applications we're going to use today as our testing is specifically a browser called Basilisk. And we're going to use the K-Meleon browser in two different flavors. We're going to try MyPal, we're going to try PaleMoon, and we're going to try the Supermium or Supermium application. Now, keep in mind, this is the one that I'm most concerned with because it's, first of all, it doesn't download from a secure website. It downloads from a man-in-the-middle type of configuration website that the IP address comes back from actually being somewhere in China. So only God knows what's actually in this actual browser. But we'll run a scan against this thing anyway to take a look at it. And once we get these things, we're going to do them as an individual install. And we're going to take a look at Wireshark to see what we see in the actual configuration. Once we have all of the browsers installed on a machine, we may take that machine and then run a Nessus scanner against it again as well to see if there's any security vulnerabilities that come back. But we're going to start with probably this Basilisk version. But before we do any of that, we're going to actually unzip these or un7-zip these, put them in individual folders, and then we're going to run a scan with both Malwarebytes and Super Anti-Spyware to see if they come back with anything questionable in the actual installation packages. Okay, so we unzipped all these files, including the Supermium, which it's an installer. However, I don't care. I want to extract the installer so that way we could actually scan within it. The PaleMoon, MyPal, K-Meleon, the other K-Meleon, and the Basilisk. So let's run a scan against these things and see if we get anything back. Okay, so we're running our scan with Malwarebytes against the folders that are currently there. So far it looks okay. I don't see anything yet specific to our scan. Okay, so scan's complete. We don't have anything that popped up. Let's scan it now with Super Anti-Spyware and just confirm that both of them show with no infection. Okay, so Super Anti-Spyware came back clean too. All right, so we don't have any direct viruses, at least not when they're pre-packaged. Let's see what happens when we run them if we get anything that pops up in any of these browsers. Okay, so we're currently monitoring from our Wireshark configuration our IP address of that actual machine. And so far we have no traffic. So I'm going to use this as my baseline when we start to run those browsers as to whether or not we're going to see anything that's not like your typical traffic, right? We should see HTTP, we should see HTTPS, we likely will see DNS traffic, but that's all we should see when we launch these browsers. So let's continue to have this monitor, and then let's jump back over to the other system real quick. Let's open up a browser, and then let's check back to see what we're actually seeing in our Wireshark capture, our PCAP. Okay, so we're back now on our Windows 10 machine with our Basilisk shortcut here on the desktop. I grabbed it from the actual browser's location here that we have. Let's see if we run this. First of all, let's see what it looks like in our actual Windows 10 configuration, if it even works. And then let's also, from there, go on to our Wireshark to see if there's anything that it captures outside of the norm. So it does launch. We don't want to import anything. We're going to click on Next. I'm not going to actually import anything. You can see at the top here, it's called Serpent. It looks like it's just a port of Firefox. Okay, let's see if we could generate some traffic here by trying to go to like google.com or something. Okay, guys, so I literally just decided the best way to do this is just to connect the system back to the internet so that way we could actually see if this works for different things. So what I did is I reconnected this machine back to the internet. I still have the Wireshark scan running in the background. I literally only see HTTPS traffic and the DNS lookups for the actual websites that I've gone to for the particular site. There is nothing in this Basilisk or Serpent browser that apparently works on Chrome. I mean, rather, works on XP, should be absolutely fine to use on XP. I don't see anything funky. There's nothing additional in here. And we could watch YouTube, and YouTube works on the XP browser. So that means that, generally speaking, you should be able to use this browser to access these particular websites with your Windows XP operating system. So I would call this one 2 thumbs up. Perfect. Now, that may change once we run the Nessus scanner to see if that adds any security concerns to the operating system. But at least now, as we sit, it looks pretty good. So let's move on from here and let's go check out another browser. Okay, guys, so the second one we're going to check out here is MyPal. Now, I've used this one in the past on Windows XP, and I know it does work. I've also used the K-Meleon browser for probably the past 10 years. So there's really no reason for me to scan that, just because I do know that that one works and it is secure without issues. But for the sake of the video and being able to provide you guys with the details, I will scan all of them and run all of them, and we'll look at all of them from the broad topic, and then we'll come to a conclusion when we're done here as to which ones are probably the best ones to use for security as well as for usability, because generally speaking, security and usability don't usually go hand in hand as being one and the same. So let's continue on. Let's open up the MyPal. Let's get the MyPal working, and then let's take a look at our configuration on our Wireshark to see if there's anything in addition that's created once we run our MyPal application. Okay, so we have our network adapter now set to a static IP address internally. We have our network adapter re-enabled. We have our scanner for our Wireshark currently running. Let's launch our MyPal application. Okay, much like the other one, the Serpent application, we can see that MyPal really does look pretty much like old school Firefox. So let's see if maybe we could generate some traffic by just trying to go to google.com. We already know that we don't have an internet connection, so we should be able to just see the HTML traffic, and that's it. Okay, so let's see if we got anything on the other side. Okay, so we're reconnected. Let's go to youtube.com and see if we can access the site just like we could in the previous browser. Okay, so it looks good. It looks like we can access it. It works just as well as the other browser did. From a functionality standpoint, this actually looks like it's an older version or older build versus the Serpent version of the actual browser. However, they both work similar. I don't see any one being more smooth than the other. Generally speaking, on the particular hardware that I'm running this on, we really won't see that. But on XP, that may be different. That said, the Serpent browser itself is actually smaller. It's not as big. The MyPal edition has, I think, 57 more megs. It's almost a quarter larger than the Serpent edition of the browser. So from a usability standpoint, I would call both of these things about equal as far as a user and functionality standpoint. They both look like they were ports of the older version of Mozilla Firefox. So let's now take a look at our next one in our list, which is PaleMoon, and see if that one adds any funkiness or if that continues on the trend here, where so far we have two browsers that look pretty good. And if they do work on XP, as the websites state, then they should be used for, or useful for people that are still on the XP operating system. But let's continue on. Let's go into PaleMoon now and see if that sees anything funky or if that continues on the same status that we're on right now, which is 2 thumbs up. Okay, so we have our scan going again. We're back on our internal network. Let's take another look at our PaleMoon configuration. We're going to just launch this and see what this looks like. So once again, this looks like yet another port of basically our... Actually, this looks a lot more like Opera. I'm curious what this is built on. Somebody add in the comments what the PaleMoon application is built on. Is it built on the Mozilla platform, or is it built on Opera? Because it really doesn't look... I mean, I guess it looks kind of like K-Meleon, which I guess is technically of a port of the Mozilla platform. I think likely they're both ports of, I would guess, SeaMonkey, which was another version of Mozilla's browser, along with Firefox at some point. I don't even know if SeaMonkey still exists, but at any rate, that's kind of what this looks like, is like SeaMonkey. So from a option standpoint, let's take a look in here and see preferences maybe. Yeah, it just looks like older Firefox. Yeah, so it does look like older Firefox. But like from a functionality standpoint, let's see if this actually works the same. Once again, we're going to go to google.com. We're not going to get the website. And then we will take a look real quick at our Wireshark configuration to confirm that we're just seeing HTML traffic, at which point then we will throw the network connection back on this thing, and we'll take a look to see if this still functions on YouTube. Okay, so we just threw in google.com. It's attempting to connect. Obviously not going to connect because don't have any connection. Interestingly enough, I am actually getting traffic from this system when I try to connect on the internal network that is not HTML traffic once I open PaleMoon. However, it's not vindictive. It's HTML responses for HTTP version 1.1, which indicates that this is likely a much older port of our Firefox configuration. Now, generally speaking, at this point, I would tell you that if you're on a later system like Windows 10, don't use this browser. Just because if it allows HTML version 1.1, it's kind of not secure anymore. You really don't want that on here, especially on a modern machine. So I would tell you that this would probably be something I wouldn't run. Now, that said, if you're on XP and you already have those configurations enabled, you have SMB1 turned on, chances are you don't have signing turned on. More than likely, you have other issues with that machine from a security perspective where this doesn't really matter so much. But for the sake of this particular configuration, I'm going to say that this is something that we should really not run on a later system if you have access to things like Edge or Chrome. This isn't a good idea anymore. Okay, so it does work as in like we could get to the actual location, but the browser is a boat anchor. It's extremely slow, and the scroll function to actually like view shorts or actual videos, it plays the video beforehand and doesn't follow the actual location as to where the browser, the config is. So I would say that this browser is pretty much unusable on Windows 10. And likely, because it's so slow on Windows 10, it would probably be like almost criminal how terribly slow it would be on Windows XP. So I would stay away from it. So I would put this one as a thumb down or 2 thumbs down, not something that you would run, not something that's functional by today's standards, and not something you'd want to run. That said, I don't see anything vindictive in it other than the weird configuration, I guess the old school protocol configuration that's not really used anymore. I wouldn't, keep in mind we're on HTTP or HTML version 5 at this point. This thing is sending out traffic packets for HTML1. That's not really something you want out there on your internal network in any way, shape, or form, because even like Internet Explorer 11 won't do that. So, I think on Windows 10, or not Windows 10, rather on Windows XP, I think it was IE 7 that got rid of HTML version 1 as being customized and open. So, I don't really see a point in running this particular version, so I would put this in the do not use list. And this is specifically PaleMoon or New Moon. Okay, guys, so let's take a look at K-Meleon. So there we go. We're in K-Meleon. And this is basically what K-Meleon looks like. And again, it's really built, I think, along the lines of SeaMonkey before SeaMonkey was killed off. I don't think SeaMonkey exists anymore, which is part of the Mozilla family. It was part of the Firefox configuration. It was just a different port of Firefox. So ultimately, what this browser gives you that the other browsers don't is it gives you the ability to block things like JavaScript and images. So if you have a slow internet connection, you can actually connect without having those things load in the background, which is kind of nice. This particular browser, from a Windows 10 perspective, is good to have on hand just in case you ever have to access, a DVR system, a firewall configuration, or anything that required like Internet Explorer 5. This will actually work to open up those particular pages, whereas the other applications up here won't. So that's something that K-Meleon has over the other applications, and why it's become and remained popular in later applications and operating systems is its ability to be used as an older revision of like Internet Explorer. So you can access ancient technology, like really old Cisco's from the early 2000s, the late 90s. You could access, like DVR systems or camera systems that were like IP-based cameras that were, from the 2005 and prior days. They required ActiveX controllers. There is no Internet Explorer in Windows 11, but this actually does a really good job of creating a bridge between your ActiveX controller and the actual application, where you could use this application to view those things. So it's a good product. With that said, as far as like our configuration is concerned, we're going to still see certain things inside of our Wireshark, specifically HTML1, just because that's enabled on this. And that's why this works really well with your old school applications and appliances. With that said, I wouldn't use it on a modern operating system as a daily driver browser, but it works fantastic if you need something old school to access appliances or applications that were designed long, long ago. As far as connecting it to the internet and going through the stuff, there's really no reason for me to do that. I proved that in a previous video for Windows XP. I'll put the link in the description if you want to check out that Windows XP video. But otherwise, this is the way the K-Meleon browser looks. And again, it does work. It's just a little squared off and clunky. It's old school. So still, I would say, as far as what we have going on, I would still recommend the Serpent and then the MyPal, and then probably this as third for a Windows XP environment. For Windows 10, Windows 11, something you need old school appliances, I would give the K-Meleon browser number 1 so far. But let's continue on the list and see what else is available in here for us to take a look at. The two here, while they are listed as two different browsers on the web, they're really not. They're both the K-Meleon browser. They're just two different revisions. The later revision is slightly renamed, but they still work the same. This particular one here is the later revision. The older revision is on the XP video. Again, I'll put the link in the description if you really want to check that out, but they work the same. So let's take a look now at the one that I think is going to be bizarre, which is the Supermium or Super Premium or whatever the heck this is called. Let's take a look at that. So this is the first one that I've launched so far that required me to open up a port on the firewall in order for this thing to communicate. Specifically, it wants access through my private network, the public network, and a domain network. So I didn't need to open up the firewall to allow it to run. So far, it's running without any firewall roles added. Now, that said, when I install Chrome on this system, Chrome does not require me to open up anything on the firewall for it to run. So I'm not entirely sure why this thing prompted to open something up on the firewall, what ports it's specifically looking for to open up. However, when we go into the about of the actual thing, we can see that this is built off of Chromium version 122.0.6261.85. It's the official build 32-bit edition. And if we look down here, we can actually see that it's built on Chromium, but then it also indicates that it has other open source software installed. So my question is what other open source software does this thing require or have installed in order for it to function? So if you click on that link, what you're going to get is you're going to get a list of everything that's open source that's installed to make this version of Chromium function. And there is a lot of it. A whole lot of it. So let's see if it's doing anything first. Let's take a look at specifically our Wireshark first. And then before I open up my port to allow this thing out to the internet, I'm actually going to Nessus scan this system with this browser running to see what comes back. And then we could open up to the internet and we'll take another Wireshark look and see if this thing is doing anything to the outside. Because again, out of all of the ones that we've tested so far, this one has the most sketch download. This one's in the most sketch location. This one's in the most sketch build. The details and information on it are sketch to begin with. So let's do some diligent checking here and actually look at this particular browser before we continue on and allow it access to the outside. So this browser is really, really noisy. Way more so than any of the other browsers that we attempted to run. So these are the actual... this is the built-in configuration for our advertising ID, specifically through Windows and through Microsoft Edge. So these are normal in a Microsoft Edge environment. However, the fact that the thing is using its internal MDNS configuration to try to cast, using the Google Cast configuration, is suspect at minimum. Why would it try to Google Cast the actual browser, the browser configuration out to the internet? That shouldn't be something that we would see. We won't see that in Google Chrome, and we surely won't see that in Microsoft Edge. So that's something I would question right off the bat why we're seeing that in our configuration for this Chromium or whatever the heck this super premium browser is. So far, it's not looking good for this thing. But let's run a Nessus scan against this system now that we have all these browsers on there. And let's see specifically if anything comes back as funky. Okay, guys, so we are currently scanning this particular system for our browser configuration. But while we're scanning this, I was curious if Malwarebytes or Super Anti-Spyware would notify us specifically that something is port scanning the actual system. And so far, in the scan process, I haven't gotten a single alert from that system in regards to being port scanned. Now, you would generally think that if you had an antivirus that totes as having anti-ransomware, having a built-in customized VPN usage, and a variety of other functions and features. However, at least from where I'm sitting, I could port scan that system all day long, and it doesn't make any difference. None of those antiviruses at this point will bark. That also includes Defender. So I figured for the sake of this, we could take a look at both systems. Now, I realize that the screen isn't as full. I'm sorry about that, but I'm limited to my real estate here as to how much screen I could actually have and record at the same time. So right now we're looking at the desktop on the right-hand side with Malwarebytes Premium Trial installed. And we're free from all detections and all blocks. We don't see anything listed there. And on the left-hand side, you can see the spinning wheel here, indicating that we're still scanning this particular system. So at this point, at least from what I could tell, Malwarebytes can't see actual live detection. It can't see actual live security threats trying to scan your system, denial of service attacks, or port scanning taking place. I thought that would be something that you might want to see just because I figured that would be something interesting from a perspective of whether or not your antivirus is actually doing everything it claims to be doing. Now, keep in mind, it's possible the reason why is because maybe Nessus has its own signature and perhaps Malwarebytes knows that that signature isn't a threat, but I highly doubt that. I highly doubt that it sees that as anything other than a port scan. So from where we're sitting, I'm guessing that in reality, this application, while it may protect you from viruses, it doesn't protect you against denial of service attacks, DOS attacks, or port scanning that takes place on your infrastructure. Okay, guys, so our scan finished. And as of now, I can tell you that, yes, we have additional things here that weren't found in the base version of Windows 10 when we introduced these additional pieces of application and software. However, the additions that are in here are not what I would consider a threat. They are things that we already know. We know that we have HTML 1.1 is capable of communicating. That's not something that we're going to be able to stop because it is on those applications themselves. And the only reason it was able to find those is because I have those applications open at the same time I was running the scan to see if it came back with any additional information. So just so we're clear, the HTML version that is 1.1 is actually the later revision, which is the 1.1 DTD, which is actually from 1992. That's the HTML version that's open on those older versions of the browsers. I don't know why, since that predates even like Firefox from existence. I mean, that would be like Netscape Navigator days, and maybe even before that. So I'm not entirely sure why that exists. It could be possible that there's something in the code for the port to Windows XP that it's required in order for it to work. I'm not 100% sure. If somebody's a dev that maybe knows that information and can add that down in the comments, that would be super helpful. I just not really sure why we would see HTML traffic for HTML 1.1 on these older browsers and not see it on the later browsers. But I don't believe that we're going to see anything really in here outside of just what I've described. For instance, we still have our SMB1 configuration error in here because, again, this machine is just pre-patched. But the rest of the errors in there they're suspect just because of the older revisions of the browser themselves. But if we remove the browser, ran the scan again, we would come back down to our 24 infos, and that's about it. There's not really anything else on the system that would cause any issues. It's a blank slate. Now, with that said, let's jump back on that system. Let's connect the desktop itself to the internet. Let's install Wireshark directly on that box. And let's run a scan while we have our weird super premium, Supermium, whatever that thing is called, browser open to see if we have any funky traffic. Okay, guys, so I'm actually connected now with just YouTube on this actual browser. And I'm going to talk to you about something that's sketchy as all hell, which is I don't have anything opened. As you can see, there's nothing else opened on this machine. We literally just have our Wireshark open. And typically I do these videos with the music or whatever muted. I'm going to unmute the sound. Again, this is open. Let's unmute the sound. So I don't know what the heck that is. With that said, we are officially now not online anymore. So I pulled the network cable because once we connected this browser to the internet, I'm not really sure what took place. As soon as I launched this thing and opened up YouTube, where we have literally nothing open, we started to broadcast some kind of a music, a song or something in a different language. I'm not entirely sure even what that was. With that said, I'm looking at our configuration here, and I don't see anything in here that indicates what's going on, but we do have all the traffic to show us specifically what happened, to build out a play-by-play as to what just took place. And there is an enormous amount of traffic that came from that browser on just the connection and opening up the YouTube website. Okay, so I dug through all the traffic, all the packets on this particular system, and these are the only ones that I see there's sketch. And what these are actually is part of Fastly.com. There's an SSL redirect built into this Chrome browser, this super premium browser, that what it's doing is it's redirecting traffic off of the actual browser to the Fastly.com website, the cloud provider location. Now, I can't get any additional information as to what cloud provider it actually is or the SSL certificate because it's actually transmitting it on HTTP or port 80 traffic. So it's wide open right over the web directly there. Now, from what it looks like it's a ad revenue company or a company that tracks your every move inside the browser so they could create marketing ads for you or ad revenue. That's not something that's built into Chrome. That's not Google in general. It's something that's built into just this super premium browser. I don't see any of these other issues on the other browsers that we've looked at. The Serpent browser, the MyPal browser, K-Meleon, even PaleMoon, even though it's got the HTML version 1.1, which is peculiar, even that doesn't have the same thing as this Chromium port for Windows XP. I would actually advise you guys to kind of play on the world of caution when you're using this particular browser on your Windows XP system. If you want something and you care whether or not somebody's actually tracking you and watching you, I would actually try this Basilisk or the MyPal browser over whatever this thing is. This thing's definitely sketch, especially since once we opened the browser and started going to a website, even with nothing there, we had a transmission of God knows what, because I don't speak that language. If anybody does speak that language, please put it in the comments. I'd like to know what the heck I was just listening to. Tell me if it's something popular. Maybe it's something I will listen to. If you guys have a link of that, just put it in the comments somewhere for the YouTube video, and I would gladly go there and check it out. Anyway, so what do we do now? I would say at this point, as far as our rating system is concerned, I would rate them specifically like this. Our Serpent browser, by far the better one. It's the fastest one. It's the one that works the best on all the websites that I tested it on. It's supported by Windows XP. It's got a decent build number as far as the Firefox. We didn't see HTML1 enabled in that browser. I would say that that's probably your best bet. The next one I would say is MyPal. MyPal's a little bigger. MyPal, since it's a little bigger, I took a look at the memory usage utilization on the VMware system itself during the process of running these browsers. And from the top down, that's pretty much how it goes to with memory utilization. With the exception of PaleMoon. For whatever reason, PaleMoon might actually be worse than the Chromium as far as memory utilization. It's not anywhere near as bad, though, as far as the traffic utilization. So I would say our Serpent's the best. Our MyPal is a second. The K-Meleon, I would say, is a third in any flavor. I would say PaleMoon is the fourth. And then I would say the Super Premium is the fifth. And the only reason why is because the Super Premium is all sorts of sketchy. Again, I'm not really sure why it's set to allow casting to it. And it's possible that what we just experienced was something casting directly to this browser from somebody that was not suspecting outside of the country. Maybe they're running the same browser, the same revision somewhere else, and for whatever reason, we got the communication, the transmission between us and them. I don't really know what the Fastly link does. We can't see any real depth of the traffic outside of the fact that we're seeing transmission of what appears to be ads over a connection to the Fastly.com website. I at this point would just say don't use this particular browser. But again, that's up to you. That's your discretion. If you decide that you don't care, then go for it. I just know that that's a first for me, is to open up a browser and automatically hear a different language transmitting through the browser that wasn't there through any of the other applications. So in closing, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thanks for sticking around. Have more to come. Thanks again for all the support.